Now, it is clear that the Gen Z population in Africa is no longer willing to accept the status quo. They are demanding change and are willing to fight for it. It's up to the government, though, their officers in these countries, to listen to the voices of the youth and take meaningful action to address their concerns. Mind you, the adults are also not exempt from these protests. In Nigeria, for example, citizens, especially the youths, began a 10-day hashtag End Bad Governance protest. They took to the streets to demand the economic and political reforms, including the reversal of some government policies. Policies like the removal of petrol subsidies, as well as the floating of the naira, which have led to the country's worst cost of living crisis in a generation, as prices of goods and services more than doubled. Taking it to Kenya, the Kenya Finance Bill protest, widely known by hashtag Reject Finance Bill 2024 or Gen Z protests, are a series of ongoing decentralized mass protests in Kenya against tax increases proposed by the government of Kenya in the Finance Bill 2024. In fact, right now, it's no longer a protest of the Finance Bill. It is a protest against the current administration and a protest against bad governance. And rumor has it that the protest in Kenya is what has sparked a domino effect in other African countries. Now, in Uganda, the upcoming protests come as a wave of deadly anti-government demonstrations that rattled neighboring country, Kenya. We'll be discussing this today with my guests. Joining us to discuss this, first we have Victor Ani Laju, former presidential candidate in NPP in Lagos. Thank you so much, Victor, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, blessings. Thank you,
pleasure.
Africa. Thank you, Nigeria.
All right. Also joining us is Kasango Dickens Pesa, the Director General, Global Council for Promotion of International Trade in Uganda, and he will be joining us very shortly while we continue the conversation. So, Victor, going straight to the protest, let me start from the wider range, right? There is a wave of protests right now across Africa. Why do you think that is?
It's hunger, unemployment, starvation, insecurity, bad governance in general, not being able to deliver on their promises, politicians not being able to deliver on their promises. In fact, especially for the young people in Africa, we are suffering. We're suffering. We're seeing investors leaving our continent. To me, I feel this is one time where there is no hope for the young African. There is nowhere you can look up to say, okay, there is hope in Ghana. There's no hope in Ghana. There's no hope in Nigeria. There's no hope in South Africa. There's no hope in Kenya. There is no hope in Zimbabwe. At some time, we all had hope that our continent, Africa, will get better. Those in Ghana was believing that Nigeria will get better. But right now, Nigeria has entered into our worst state. We are economically down. We are the second poorest nation in the world. Our unemployment rate, especially the youth, is the highest in the world as of today. And more industries, more factories are leaving Nigeria, leaving Africa continent. But this whole thing boils down to bad governance, bad leaders. There's no investor that wants to invest in a country where you don't trust their leaders. There's no investor that will invest in a country where their leaders are dubious. They are fraudsters. There's no investor that wants to invest in a place where there is no peace. Insecurity have come to play, but the insecurity is not really the problem. The problem is that the young people in Africa that makes up over close to 80% of the population of Africa, they are hopeless. We are hopeless. We are jobless. We lack the basic amenities. There is no constant power supply. Our internet is the poorest in the world. We have resources, but our government have not been able to turn our resources into finished products. We still carry a lot of our natural resources to Europe, to America, to Asia, to China, to reprocess them to become finished products. As for we in Nigeria, you cannot imagine we have crude oil. We are going to send out our crude to other countries to refine the crude and bring it back for us as finished products, which is very bad. And these same people in governance, they keep coming out every year with budgets. They are spending so much money, but we can't see the impact. Nigeria, as of today, we are owing over 90 trillion naira in the space of 10 years, but we cannot see the economical impact. We can't trace one factory or we can't trace anything that was built with that money or where the money was spent. Now that we have the richest man from Africa is from Nigeria, we have wealthy people. In fact, there are people who are even more wealthier than Nigeria as a country. There are people who have more money than us as a country. So as Africa in general, we have Africans that are richer than the whole Africa put together, and which is very, very bad. Africa is the hope of the entire world. We don't have natural disaster. We don't have earthquake. We don't have what other people are suffering for. We have everything.
Okay.
We have water around us. We have the population dynamic is high.
Right.
You know? We have young people who are willing to work. Europe currently now is paying Africans to come to Europe to come and work for them. Canada is paying Nigerians to come and work for them. Why don't we have them here?
All right, Victor, very quickly, we have Kasango Dickens-Pesa joining us now. I did introduce him earlier as the Director, Global Council for Promotion of International Trade in Uganda. And very quickly, I want to get Kasanga's opinion about the wave of protests across Africa and what the general demand is. There seems to be a kind of similarity. Each country has its own peculiarity, Nigeria, Kenya, Uganda, but there are certain similarities as well as distinctions. So, Kasango, what would you say is the similar voice that is being heard across these countries in the continent? What is that one thing that they're clamoring for the most?
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I think I totally agree with my colleague. It's the African time. It's the time for the youth. And different, I think, from the other generations that have gone before us, we actually know what we want. So, given that in perspective, we're looking at how best can we best put our time to use. So that's why you're finding that it's the youth in Kenya, it's the youth in Nigeria, it's the youth in Uganda that are looking at, okay, the old people have had their time, but what we have to do as the youth to stand up, because most of these countries that you just mentioned have at least 50 and above of the populations as youth. So we're looking at how best can we put ourselves to proper use in the long run. Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that. Now, Victor, looking at the protests in Nigeria, and I know we had a conversation on social media earlier before today, you were saying something about the miscommunication. The process in Nigeria is supposed to span all the way through 10 days. That's the #EndBadGovernance protest. But somehow, after the president's speech, there seemed to be a disconnect. Some people were still on the streets. Some people claimed that, they were told to end the protest. What role do you think miscommunication has played in affecting the convergence of people when it comes to clamoring for better governance in Nigeria, especially?
Truth about it is that for us here in Nigeria, we found out that the current administration, which is part of their way of doing things, always creates a very wrong narrative. Narrative like the End Bad Governance protest is supposed to be on till tomorrow, Saturday, which is supposed to be like the 10th day. But immediately the president gave that speech, which was not accepted across the nation. They increased their armory. They sent out more police and army. Even for us here in Lagos, that we normally protest at Ojota, by the Monday of it, the police have asked us to stop coming there to protest. And I think that was the same day that one of your media news reporter was harassed by thugs that are being sponsored by these same politicians, especially the APC party, right? And it's so bad that these are not even young people. Because I was there on that day. A lot of the people who came to harass us are not youths. They are people in their 50s and their 60s. And the truth about it is that one thing that they fail to understand is we are helping them to make sure Nigeria does not fail. That's something that we are standing for. And like I said, the end bad governance in Nigeria is going to lead to end bad governance in Africa. Because currently now, all over Africa, the indices that were saying, majority of the politicians are not delivering. But one of the annoying things is that, but they keep spending money. We are not seeing the impact of the money that has been spent. Like I said, Nigeria, for example, we are owing 90 trillion naira, over 90 trillion naira, but we can't see the impact of where 90 trillion naira was spent into. And the World Bank is still going to give them more money before this year runs, and even till next year, even till 10 years time, because they are all banking on our crude oil. But we, the younger people, who are supposed to be the leaders of today, we are not even seeing the infrastructures. We're not getting the opportunity to lead our country. We are not even being part of governance. We are kept aside. We are not getting the dividend of democracy. All of these things, the government will come and tell you that we are doing this, we are doing just okay. Let's take for example now the president's speech. The president could not mention one location to say he talked about they are going to fund agriculture. Where? He said that they want to do about 1 million hectare. Where is the hectare? Where is it located? Can you give us the address? Let's go there and see where that agricultural farm is located. You can't. They just come and give you misleading information. They will say we want to do this, we want to invest in the youth. Where are the youth that you're investing in? We should see procedure. We should see that you are registering them. We should see that you are training them with skill. I am an advocate for skill acquisition. And actually, what even baffles me about this whole matter is that I myself and my team, we've already started skill empowerment that was supposed to kick off that August 1st. But we had to suspend it, looking at the outcome of the protests. But what I'm saying, by now, Nigeria should have a youth empowerment scheme where once you get to the age of 16, you can enroll and acquire a skill. And if they want to see the people who are acquiring this skill, they should be able to give us addresses, centers where these young people are being taught. But we are not seeing any of that. We are not seeing good road, but we don't have constant power supply. Our factories are going out. Investment is going down. Whether they like it or not, whether they want to stop us from protesting, Nigerians will still come out again to protest. But I will say to the politicians, the earlier you listen to Nigerians, especially the young people, we are over 70% of the population of Nigeria, the better for everybody. I'm saying this not because I'm still young, but I'm looking at the indices right now, the statistics before us right now. The older generation have even eaten the future of we, the younger generation. So we are even living in debt. An average Nigerian today is owing debt running into hundreds of thousands.
All right, Victor.
Because this same money that they're owing is still we that will end up paying it.
Okay, Victor, thank you so much for your thought on that. Very quickly, I want to hear Kasango Dickens' opinions as well regarding social media. Now, we understand that sometimes when these things are about to happen and, say the government is in support of it, one of the things that they tend to stifle is the ability to communicate. And we saw a little bit of that, even though it wasn't exactly attributed to the protests, but we saw that a little before the protests, some telcos were the services were malfunctioning, so to say, limited services and stuff. And we've seen that happen across other African countries deliberately. So what would you say is the driving power or driving force of social media when it comes to enabling the voices of the youths, especially, to speak up against bad governance. Looking at what happened in Kenya, for example, that caused a ripple effect. And I think that's what largely influenced the protests in Nigeria. I'm not sure about that in Uganda, but we see that the youths across Africa are catching the wave and they're getting tired of bad governance. So what role would you say that social media played in all of that?
Thank you. I think from what we come to learn as the youth, we have a voice that over the years, the government would control what we say, how we say it, because they owned either shares in the different media houses, but now we can use our phones, we can use the power of the internet to voice our concerns, to voice whatever we have as a problem we're facing in our continent. So I'll give an example from even Kenya. You find the 25-year-old educated with a degree, they do not have a job. But they're thinking, if I start a business, how much will it be? Before I actually start and start breaking even, I've already spent 40 or 35% of the initial investment capital. I walk into a bank and the bank is asking me to either have a security just from university. Either my parents have a property I can put into a bank for security, or I'm going to look within my neighboring friends. And the friends that at that moment are usually people that you're within the age group, you've not amassed that much human capital to sustain the growth. But with social media, we get to appreciate the different struggles we have as a collective, as the youth. The same thing in Nigeria as well, that as you're struggling as a businessman, pushing the goods you're selling, you want to know, okay, in that fight, who can actually hear me out? With these different government officials being driven around in expensive cars, you definitely know what's happening in Nairobi, where they had actually passed a budget for the cars for the different politicians. And to the youth, is looking at healthcare, is looking at, if I start my family, I have a structure in place to support my day-to-day operations. I'm probably taking myself back to school. My children can go through a proper education system, but to the politicians, because they feel the variety, this is not usually the point of concern, because to us, it should be now we're looking at things like reduction of the cost of capital into the continent. We should be looking at infrastructure. Today we're having conversations with actors in banks. We're looking at, okay, we are limited on how much alcohol volumes can flow through the continent. It takes about 2 to 3 weeks to cover the continent.
All right, Kasango, apologies for interrupting you like that, but we have information from one of our correspondents now. Bettina Nweli is live at Alausa, where there is an ongoing procession for those who lost their lives in the hashtag End Bad Governance protest that is ongoing. So we want to take a look at that. So we'll be joining Bettina live now.